All right, everybody. This is IGTV, production of New York City INFRAGARD. We're with Bill Murray. We got interrupted on his first video. He's talking about Olympic Games, but it's a lot deeper than just Olympic Games. It has to do with, I guess, this whole policy area for cyber warfare and things of that nature. All right, Bill, go ahead. Take it away.
We can no longer avoid cyber conflict. Thanks to Mr. Obama, that is no longer an option. Cyber war is established. It now has its own congregation and priesthood. Mr. Obama has announced that during his second term, his administration will develop a cyber weapons program. He has begun a cyber arms race. At the exact same time that we're trying to enter into arms control treaties in other spaces, he starts an arms race. Let's hope that it's not too late to avoid cyber war, one that will lead to the armed conflict that the administration is threatening. President Obama has already drawn his line in the sand, the cyber line, an arbitrary line which if an adversary crosses, he can expect Mr. Obama to retaliate with armed force. One more assertion of American exceptionalism. Presumably the line is after espionage, which we clearly tolerate, but before the kind of sabotage that he himself authorized against Iran. Obama to Iran. We are the biggest bully on the block. If you retaliate in kind, expect our drones and our bombers. How long will it be before someone equally immature decides to test his resolve? I admit that Mr. Obama's position was troubling. He claims that it was an alternative to armed conflict with Iran. And I'm sure that that's how the sponsors of the virus presented it to him. However, that's the kind of false choice that is always used to justify war. We all remember the scenarios that Colin Powell used to justify war with Iraq. In contrast to his scenarios, the facts were that Saddam Hussein was a threat to his neighbors, but not to us. He could not project power this far. If everything that Secretary Powell had said had been true, Saddam Hussein still would not have represented an existential threat to us. It still would not have justified war. Terrorism is not an existential threat to us unless we make it so. If the Brits survived the Blitz and the IRA with their liberties tattered but not torn, we can survive anything Al-Qaeda can do. Terrorism is not the equivalent of thermonuclear war. Possession of the bomb by Iran does not constitute an existential threat to us, or even to Israel. If mutually assured destruction worked against the USSR for 50 years, it is likely that the Iranians would not risk the obliteration of their 5,000-year-old culture by bombing Israel. Now, I admit that part of my anger is because Mr. Obama's action contaminated my sand pile, part because he has misused a tool from my kit. But most of my anger is that of an informed citizen whose government committed him to a world-changing act of aggression in secret without the dialogue that democracy requires of such an act that cannot be undone. It is the anger of a citizen with a special appreciation of facts that he knows his fellow citizens do not enjoy. Infants and others who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Those of us who have lived it become very intolerant of those who refuse to heed its warnings. Ultimately, this was a political decision, not even a foreign policy or a national security decision. It was made not by professionals for technical reasons, but by politicians in search of political advantage. However, that does not absolve us as citizens or as professionals. We have an obligation to educate our fellow citizens and to help them hold the politicians accountable. We must earn the right to be called professionals and to be paid the big bucks. Joe, I hope we can glue this back together with some semblance of an orderly presentation.
Yeah, no, I think we're gonna do fine with it, Bill.